Good afternoon, folks. This is Robert Chappell, Executive Editor of Madison365 with your daily update for January 3rd, back after a couple of days off for the new year. The numbers today are a little bit misleading, maybe, if we don't give them proper context. So that's what we're going to try to do today. We do have a very high positive test rate today, which it might be a little bit easy to misunderstand. So we're going to try to wrap some context around it. But overall, the news is not very good, to be honest with you, even once we put that context on that number. So let's go through the numbers. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. We'll get through some numbers. I got a couple other news-related, non-COVID related news items for you, but we'll still try to get through this pretty quick so we can get back to the Packers, which is, we know, the important thing right now. It is so it's a Sunday. We know testing and reporting is always low on Sundays. We have only 4,588 tests being reported today. Those are, or I should say, people being tested. Those are people who are testing negative or positive for the first time. Of those, 2,446 are positive, so more than half. 53% are positive. Now, we could say that's a really, really bad number, and it is. But let's take it with a tiny grain of salt that it's probably wouldn't be high like that if this was like a normal Wednesday, right? Because I think right now, over this holiday week, what we've been seeing is people who have been tested negative several times before, not like every day, but like somebody goes tested negative in June and then test positive now. That's going to skew this data a little bit because that's going to be that first positive test, even though there are more negative tests that are not getting reported quite the right way in that daily number. But also just lower number of tests generally over this past week and a half or so. Means that the people who are being tested are more likely to be positive, right? We're not seeing that, just to check, just to see kind of testing. We're seeing people who are at the hospital, who are really sick, who are going in to get tested, or who are the kind of people who are getting tested regularly, who are healthcare workers, who are therefore more likely, who are just more at risk. So don't panic over that 53% number. It looks bad. It's bad. It's just bad, but don't panic over it because when you think about it in context, it might not be as bad as you think it is. The numbers that are bad are the 7-day rates, and the 7-day rates are not subject to those same kind of external influences, right? Because the daily rate that we're talking about, the 53%, is only tests that are reported today. Those are tests that have taken place over the past 5 to 7 days. The 7-day rate actually takes into account when each of those was actually processed. Okay, so the 53% today doesn't affect this number. And over the past 7 days, 31% of the people who've been tested have tested positive. 3 out of 10 people who've been tested positive. When you look at, and that's up. That's the highest it's been since December 6th. So almost a month. Almost a month that number was going down. And now it's going back up over the past 1, 2, 3, 4. It's been going up every day for the past 5 days. I don't like that at all. Especially considering that number is not one to take with a big grain of salt right now. Like, that number's pretty truly representative of what's happening. The other number that we don't like is the percentage of all tests. Meaning even the multiple tests, even people who are tested multiple times. Of all those tests, 10.8% are positive, which is roughly a little bit less than 1 out of 9 tests is positive. We have to get that to 1 out of 50 before we can really say we're got this thing under control. That also is going up. That was a number that I was feeling good about over the past month. It's been going down every day. And I allowed myself briefly to believe it might just continue to go down It was like 13 or 14 at one point, which is outrageously bad. And it got all the way down to 8.1. And I kind of thought like maybe it's going to just keep going down and it'll be 2 or 3 in a few more weeks. Maybe we've turned a corner. But it hit 8.2 about a week ago, and it's been going up ever since, and it is now 10.8. So again, almost 11%, about 1 out of 9 over the past 7 days. 1 out of every 9 tests has been positive in Wisconsin. And once again, we need that to be 1 out of 50. Okay. Now, we are also reporting only 5 deaths today. Again, that is a function of reporting not happening over the weekends. It takes about 4 weeks for a death to be reported as a COVID death because of the amount of paperwork and confirmation that has to happen. But that paperwork doesn't get done over the weekends or on holidays. So I would anticipate, a larger number of deaths beginning to be reported tomorrow and the next day and over the course of this week. I don't know what it's going to be. I hope it's not too high. I hope we're not in the triple digits the way we were before Christmas, but we'll have to wait and see. We are now at 4,875 total fatalities. That's about 1% of the total number of cases have died. I don't love that. I wish that was a little bit lower. Our current death average over 7 days is 26, but over 30 days is 44. So that tells you is that 26 is artificially low because the past 7 days have been 2 holidays, basically. So we just haven't, the medical examiners' offices, the public health departments that upload those death certificates, that certify them, etc., aren't as busy. People are taking time off for the holidays, which obviously they're entitled to do. So, so we won't fault them for that, but that's the reason that the death average is low. So we'll wait about 2 weeks probably to get a really much better picture of what the real situation is in terms of deaths. Now, the other number that has me concerned a little bit today, hospitalizations, which is to say people currently hospitalized. The alternative care facility in Milwaukee is still empty, which is good news. Right? They've had over the course of this thing in the past, since mid-October when that opened, there have been about 170 people who have had at least a brief stay there. Which, it was built for 500 at a time, and the most that were ever there at a time was 23. So that's good. That means our hospital system didn't get fully overloaded the way some others have. But there were periods of time when certain hospitals needed to turn people out and move people to that alternative facility. So the fact that it's empty right now is good. However, the hospital population, the number of people hospitalized with COVID, has gone down again for the past almost 6 weeks now. But the last 2 days, it has gone back up. And today it went up back kind of a lot. It went from it went up by 51. And is now at, I'm sorry, I had the wrong thing open here. Number of people hospitalized is now 1,069, which again is not as bad as it has been before, right? It was over 2,200 at one point. Okay, so that 1,069 feels like a lot, but it's not as bad as it was. But it's 51 more than yesterday, which in yesterday was 8 more than the day before that. So 2 days in a row, it's gone up after after almost over a month of going down every day. The number of patients in intensive care, on the other hand, actually went down by 5 and is now at 225. So that's better. Okay. So once again, that's a number that's not terrible, especially when you think about it in context, but is higher than I want it to be, and is moving in the wrong direction. Because what we talk about always is trends. Which way are we going? We're going up, we're going down, we get better, we're getting worse. And in most measures right now, even though we've been, and perhaps because we've been, off for the holidays, there hasn't been a lot of testing, hasn't been a lot of reporting. All the numbers are kind of moving in the wrong direction right now, which I don't love. So we'll give it a few more days. I'll keep coming. I will keep giving you updates every day, of course. But by the middle of this week, and then we'll have a better sense of the testing, the positive cases, and then another week later, probably we'll get a better sense of fatalities and that kind of stuff. So that is what I have for you on COVID. I have a couple other things to mention, so don't scroll away, but take a short pause here. A word from our sponsor, Madison College. I'll be back in 15 seconds right after this.
This is it.
Online learning does not have to be scary. And Madison College was there for me.
We have people that are dedicated to our students' online success.
We can help you with your technology.
Give us the college try for 7 days. No risk, no worries. Madison College.
And we're back. Thank you for staying with me. The news today that I have to share with you that's not COVID related is good news, actually. You might have heard about Mackenzie Scott, who's the former wife of Jeff Bezos from Amazon. She has a little bit of money to spare, apparently. And she sort of quietly, over the course of the past 4 months, has given away $4 billion. Can you imagine? And has given it away to 384 different charities that she very carefully chose. These were unsolicited grants. Like these weren't charities that came. It's not like usually what happens something like this. Somebody will say, I'm going to give away $4 billion. Please apply. Please come beg me for this money. And then you give the money. And then you have to do all this, jump through a bunch of hoops to report about it. And to report how you spent the money. And there's usually some sort of strings attached. There's this money is meant to do this thing. Okay. As a nonprofit, I know a little bit about this. We get a lot of grants from foundations, and this often, and not to be ungrateful, we need the support. We value the support, but a lot of times what happens is this is meant to do this thing. This is this specific kind of reporting, or to pay for this specific thing, and which is fine for us, but we spend a lot of time and energy doing that application and then doing the reporting. But what she did instead was she got together some people, and they actually proactively went out and vetted a bunch of organizations, like 8,000 organizations they looked into, more carefully vetted it about 820, and then finally gave donations to 384. I didn't make a big announcement about it until December 15th. And we found out recently that the YWCA Madison was one of those recipients. It's the only one in Madison, one of only 5 in Wisconsin. And I got to talk with Vanessa McDowell, who's the CEO of YWCA Madison. And the other thing about this gift is it's unrestricted, meaning it doesn't have to go to a particular thing. That was the whole point of the vetting, right? And this is kind of a shift that's happening in the philanthropic world right now. And Vanessa kind of told me in this interview that she hopes that it continues to be this way, where Mackenzie Scott and her team really dug into these organizations and said, who's really running a good, tight ship, right? So that I can just write you a check and I trust you with it. Like, I know you're doing good work. Here's some money to do more of that good work. Do it however you want to do it. Use it for whatever you need to use it for. Because I've done the research. I trust you. Here's the money. Right? I had a great conversation a year ago with Chief Abidar from UW Health about that same thing, that they're doing that same kind of thing. Where UW Health is a charitable arm, this sort of philanthropic arm that's funding local initiatives that will improve the health of the public, but not putting any strings on it. Just write a check. Here's some money. Do your thing. right? So Vanessa declined to say what the exact amount of the grant was, but she did identify. And what she said happened was really interesting. Before Thanksgiving, she's trying to put together a budget for next year, and she's literally talking about she's cutting two really important programs because they lost funding. Because COVID was a crazy year. A lot of funders had to tighten up. They lost funding for their housing program, or for two different housing programs, two different sorts of housing programs. And she was going to have to cut them. And then she just got this email out of the blue saying, could you, we have a donor interested in donating. Could we set up a phone call? And she literally thought it was a scam, which, we get a lot of those too. And, but ended up on the phone with Mackenzie Scott's representative saying, we want to write you a check. Is that okay? And it literally saved those two programs. And those two, and again, I don't know how much the actual donation was, but those two programs add up to $400,000. So it's at least that much, right? Because I was able to save those two programs plus some, is what Vanessa told me. So anyway, it's a good conversation. It's a good interview. It's on the website right now, Madison365.org. The other thing I'll mention today is that if you haven't listened to Friday's edition of It's Only 10 Minutes, you should. Not because it's just me talking for a long time. Although, of course, that's what you're here for, right? That's what you listen to this thing for, is to listen to me talk. So if you want to listen to me talk some more, because you can't get enough of me talking, go to listen to It's Only 10 Minutes. But it's a really good conversation because I talked with Dave, our editor-in-chief, who's that guy on the left there, about his favorite stories of the year and about just doing journalism in this time, right? And the fact that we don't have an office or a newsroom, really. I mean, we used to have an office, but since COVID happened, we just didn't need it anymore because we never are together. So we no longer have an office, and we never really had a proper newsroom because the community is our newsroom. We don't want people hanging around in an office. We have our people out and about in the community, right? But in COVID times, you can't be out in the community. So it's been really weird and difficult to do this journalism. Add to that we are covering communities of color, and there's a massive Black Lives Matter movement all summer long. And how do we manage that? How do we navigate that? And especially in the COVID situation. So we had a really it's supposed to be only 10 minutes, but this one ended up being about a half hour, just because I think if you're interested in this stuff, if you're interested in what we do and you're interested in journalism and media more broadly, and community journalism in particular, and like the difference between community journalism and mainstream journalism, and sort of our, if you're still watching this, you're obviously invested in Madison365 in some way, or connected to us in some way, right? So I think you might be interested to know a bit more about our mindset, sort of how we do things, how we think about journalism, how we think about news, how we think about our audience. Because one of the things I mentioned in the podcast is that, back in the day, we journalists used to think about you as our audience. And this was a one-way thing. Like, I have information, I give it to my audience. Then in the late 90s, they started talking about it as the public, more like a public square kind of situation where I'm interacting with the public. And now the way we think about it, the way most mainstream news outlets still think of it as audience, but we think about it as community. That you are a member of my community and I'm a member of your community. And that we're in this kind of together. And this is a conversation. And this is the reason that I'm reporting this information to you is because I'm a member of your community and I want this community to be a better place. I want my fellow community members to be informed. Right. So that's a whole half hour conversation about kind of that, and just kind of the looking back on the milestones of the year and that second week of March when everything changed, and first UW closed, and then we had a staff meeting in the office, and then the schools are closed. It was like a wild 3-day period. So we kind of reminisce on that. I reminisce about getting tear gassed downtown Madison during a protest and the white privilege of being able to go behind the police lines. So all sorts of good stuff. So wherever you get podcasts, go to Stitcher, Spotify, whatever, and just search It's Only 10 Minutes and listen to that Friday conversation. I think you'll be, if you're interested in media and journalism and this kind of stuff. I think you'll enjoy it. So that's all I have for you today. Let's get back to the Packer game. Looks like they're winning now 14-10 with about 5 minutes left in the first half. So and go get caught up there. And I will enjoy your Sunday evening. And we will talk